Smiley Podcast, where ordinary people living extraordinary lives share their experiences with you. Today we have David Olds, and we're really excited to have him here.
All right. So David Olds is a full-time real estate investor based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. He started his investing in real estate, his investing in real estate back in 2002, when he and his wife bought their first home that was unknowingly a foreclosure. I can't wait to hear more about that. After flipping that property for a $50,000 profit, they discovered the world of real estate investing and went on to do numerous flips in Central Florida before the crash in 08-09. Struggling to find deals during the last economic crash, he and his wife relocated to Chattanooga, Tennessee to work a new market area there, and through their hard work and sheer determination, became the dominant wholesalers in the region. Along with the way he accumulated over 100 rental properties and continued to flip, mastering not only wholesaling, but property management as well as raising private money and rehabbing. Some of David's guiding principles are simplicity is scalable and always start with the end in mind. And it's this common sense approach to business that has enabled him to build a strong business with an amazing team. With that, David, I want to say welcome to the podcast. Anything I leave out there? Anything you would add to that bio, the intro? What did I miss?
That's pretty good, right? I guess. I don't know.
Okay. I see you're humble too, huh?
I mean, we're just people that have been, wholesaling and being investors for a long time. And
let's start there. What is wholesaling?
Awesome. So wholesaling is an aspect of being a real estate investor. It's commonly it's sort of like the entry drug for real estate investors, because it doesn't take a lot of, I don't want to say time, but it doesn't take a lot of money or credit. So when we started wholesaling, we were broke, like broke, and then cut it in half. We were that broke. Like we had no money. And, so wholesaling is this. I'm going to go out and I'm going to find somebody who has a need to sell their property, right? Typically, this is what I always say real estate investors do. We are in the business of helping people. So somebody has a property and it's probably keeping them up at night, right? Whatever the situation is, could be death, divorce, taxes, job transfer, bankruptcy, right? There's a million, life happens to people, and there's a lot of reasons, and maybe they inherited the property, but they need to get rid of this, right?
Okay.
So they're willing to just, sell this thing at a price that just, for them, they just want to be rid of it. No different than somebody who takes a $10,000 Rolex in and pawns it for $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever, right? You're solving a problem for them. And so we're taking that property. Once it's under contract, now we have a lot of different options of things that we can do with it, right? We could buy it and keep it. We could, assign that contract to somebody else, which is really what wholesaling is. So in the model of wholesaling, we have that property under contract. And what makes us different from a realtor is we have that contract, and that contract has value, right? Let's say this property, this phantom property that we're talking about, fixed up is worth $100,000, but it needs $20,000 worth of work, but I've got a contract to purchase it at $50,000. Well, again, if I can find an investor who's willing to pay $60,000 for that property, well, the difference between those two contracts is a wholesale fee, and that's how I get paid. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Makes perfect sense. Perfect sense.
Being a realtor, in that we're not listing a property for sale. And honestly, we're not even selling a property as a wholesaler. We're selling our contract. So words definitely matter there.
Okay, makes sense. I want to dive deeper into that, but let's go back a little bit further. So you mentioned you got started in real estate by buying a house that you later found out was a foreclosure. Tell me about that.
So kind of funny. So now everybody knows about like foreclosures and all of the things. But back in 2002, when my wife and we had just gotten married, and we had this great realtor, and also 2002, no internet, right? The way that we got properties was the realtor would send me an email and I would have to print it out with all these properties and then drive around to go look at them. But we found this property. We went to closing, and as we were coming out, it was like $97,000. And my realtor's name was DJ Rivera. She's South Florida. Anyways, I said, DJ, I don't understand. How did we buy that from Wells Fargo? Didn't somebody own it? Because it's not new. She's like, yeah, dummy. It was a foreclosure. I'm like, well, what does that mean? She's like, oh, well, somebody had a loan. They didn't pay it. The bank took it back. And that's why you bought it directly from them. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting, I guess, right? Like, I don't know. I'd never been exposed to that, right? Like most normal people who aren't in this business, like that was new to me. So yeah, that's sort of how we got started. And at the time, I actually went to college. I went to UMass for a degree in criminal justice. And I decided I wasn't skinny enough to be jumping over fences and chasing people, right? and being shot at for $15,000 back then didn't seem like a good idea. So I had worked my way through college in retail stores. So, like 3 recessions ago, the market crashed in Boston where I was, and my parents moved to Florida, to Delray Beach, just north of Boca. And I came down here and started working for this hardware company. And it was Scotty's Hardware Stores. Back then, they were a big deal. They had like 180 stores in Florida. Sort of like, think like there's Ace Hardware and then there's Home Depot. They were sort of in the middle, right? But anyway, so I worked for this company, and we had bought our house. So I'm like, oh, well, I'm around building materials all day and people who fix houses, so let's do that thing, right? And growing up, my dad was like the house fix guy. So we did some stuff. We pulled up carpet. We put down laminate floors, took out sliding glass doors, put in French doors. Just basic stuff, right? Changed out some moldings. And 2 years later, we sold that property for like $150,000. So same realtor, going back into the new title company. And she's like, oh, so you've owned this for 2 years, so you're not going to have taxes on this property. I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, dummy, it's a homestead. Probably did me a lot, and I love this one. I'm like, I remember stopping and going into the thing going, so you're saying I got to live in this thing, I fixed it up, I'm going to make $53,000 or whatever this is today, and I don't have to pay taxes on it? She's like, no, you don't know that? I'm like, no, nobody tells you this stuff. That's fantastic. That might be the greatest thing ever. So,
right.
So that happened, and then we did it again and again and again and again, and that's sort of how we got into real estate investing.
That's amazing. I actually was following you on YouTube, and I listened to your video, your hour and 38 video. I was very informative. I had a lot of tidbits from there, and the one I want to circle back to a little bit later is where the lady asked you a question and something you bought a house and somebody was dead, and it was a process that was.
That's what you guys want to talk about, dead people.
But I want to get to that process, but what I thought was interesting is because you mentioned on one of your YouTubes, you own the street. And at first, I thought you were just a buyer and holder. But then when I looked at that was a short video, but when I looked at the long one, I realized you're a wholesaler. So the question is, when do you see something, because you have the end in sight, that you decide, you know what, I'm going to keep this one versus I'm going to put it on a contract? Because
great question.
I saw that between the 2 different videos, and I was like, oh.
So you got a lot to unpack there. So there's the dead people. We've actually bought 2 properties where people had died in them. And I'm not superstitious, so I don't care, but it's a weird thing. Mostly it's weird because people like neighbors will want to come talk about it. We'll come back to the other one because the one we talked about there was crazy. So here's what happened. We'll skip ahead in the story. We bought a couple houses. We started flipping them. I got involved in our local real estate investment group. And the way that I found them was a crazy story, which is cool because I'm going to get to meet him in a couple weeks. But I was at the airport and I picked up the Rich Dad Poor Dad book from Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there reading it, like flipping through. I'm like, I was picking up my kids. They were being flown in. And I'm like, this is a great book. Like it was an easy read. I'd read like 10 pages standing there. So I bought it and went home. And, at the end of it, it says, if you want to be in real estate, go find a real estate group and be a part of that and be around people that are doing the thing that you want to do. So I did that. But anyways, we'll just fast forward to, we were doing real estate. The market just crashed as hard as anything can crash into the wall in 2008 and 9. Mm-hmm. And, so we moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is where we're at now. And we came here just for real estate. We didn't know anybody. It's literally that proverbial burn the boats thing. We left everything we had in Florida and we came here to do real estate. So we came here with the idea that we were going to buy some multifamily properties, right? Some duplexes, triplexes, quads, maybe a 10 unit. We were going to do all of those things. And as every real estate investor starts out, they start small and then it's like Monopoly, right? We're going to start with one house and we want to have the fourplex and we want to get bigger and bigger. So anyways, seemed like a fantastic idea. We're coming to Chattanooga. Also, we were broke, but we're going to start doing some marketing and we're going to find some deals. And two problems with that. One, I was broke and just had a house foreclosed on. So that didn't help the idea of going out and getting bank loans. The other problem was, even if I could find someone to co-sign for me, banks weren't in the lending business back in 2009. Banks were in the taking properties back business.
Right.
So that kind of strategy, I thought to myself, well, we'll just have to set this aside for a little bit. And the one thing that we got really great at was marketing, right? Because we had no money. And it's not like today. Real estate investors today, you can get, someone to make calls for you from Egypt for, $4 an hour. You can get someone to do texting for you. You can run pay-per-click ads on Google. You can run Facebook. Like, none of that existed back then, right? And I hate to be the old guy, right? I am now the crotchety old guy who sits on the porch.
Back in my day.
I hear myself saying that. I'm like, geez, I'm that guy. But so back then, we had very old school, like traditional method. We did what was called driving for dollars. We just drove neighborhoods looking for houses that looked like they were empty, right? Houses that looked like they needed work. We'd write them down and I'd go home and my wife would send them a letter. We put out those little street signs. They call them bandit signs, right? We buy houses, call this number. So that was how we started. Very shoestring, bootstrap kind of budget. But anyways, to get to answer your question. So we got very good at marketing and we're bringing in a lot of leads, people who said, hey, I want to sell my house. They raised their hand and said, hey, can you help me? And, within that, we said, we started out with wholesaling because we needed to generate cash, right? In real estate investing, really there's three kind of ways that you do it. You have wholesaling, which is very quick cash, right? You can contract something, literally sell it in a week, close it out in another 2 weeks, and you can have cash in your hand within 30 to 60 days. So that's relatively quick in the real estate world. But kind of the middle way to make money is you're rehabbing properties, right? You buy it, you fix it up, you resell it. Maybe 3 to 6 months, 3 to 8 months, depending upon how big your project is. And then longer term money is being a landlord, right? Having rental properties or development or storage units or whatever, right? But that's your longer term money. So anyways, we were bringing in these deals, lots of deals. We're looking at all of them. And at some point I decided, these people own this house and there's no mortgage on it. Maybe I can make a deal where they will finance the property to me instead of going to Bank of America, right? So what happened was we started offering that to people, right? Let's say, Smiley, you call me, you're like, hey, I need 80 grand for this house. And I go over and look and I'm like, well, man, dude, for cash, all I can give you is 45, right? That's the only thing that makes sense because cash is king, right? We all understand that. If we're going to spend cash for something, it's got to be cheap. But man, if you don't need all the money at once, we could work out, some kind of deal where I'll make payments to you. Maybe I can get you your 80, right? So we sort of backed into that process and we got really good at that. And that's how we started to accumulate all of these rental properties.